Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Victoria Scott, and today I'm going to show you my top 3 exercises for building quads. These are my personal favorites. It's what I do pretty much year round. I include these moves into my routine on a weekly basis, and I've seen significant growth. Now, this particular video was inspired from my last video where I discussed my top 3 exercises for building glutes. I got such great feedback from that, and I think you guys learned a lot from it in terms of just some little gold nuggets and tweaks that maybe you want to try into your own training. Now, again, this isn't the end-all be-all of exercises. I'm not saying these are the #1 exercises on the planet. What I am saying is this is what I do, this is what worked for me, and what I've seen outstanding results with. So I hope you guys get a little bit from this, apply it to your training, and then of course, let me know what you think in the comments below if you're going to try some of these moves. Please share this with a friend, and let's get to it. All right, so exercise #1, we are here at the infamous hack squat machine. A lot of people hate this machine. I love it. I have a love-hate relationship. You guys know me, I'm a Taurus. I don't like to do things if I deem it as a waste of my time. So even if it's painful, if I feel like it's hyper effective, I'm gonna suck it up and do it because I'm gonna get a great result. It's also why this machine is on my list. It has been an exercise I've included into my training, oh gosh, probably going on 4 years now. I pretty much do hack squats every single week. Now I understand some people have knee pain, knee injuries, depending on maybe past sports injuries, maybe something else going on, or if you're just getting into training, this machine might even be too heavy for you to use. That's very possible. I'll give you guys some substitutions as well if this is not an option for you. Maybe your gym doesn't even have this. I'm actually shocked because this is arguably one of the best quad developers out there, frankly. But still, there are gyms out there that don't even have this machine. So I'm fortunate. We actually have, I think we have 2 of these machines and a seated version here. This machine by itself is heavy. And I do like to perform this neutral stance, toes slightly turned open, and I do squat to depth. And I mean as low as I can take this machine. That not only is gonna hit the quads, but it's also, I've personally noticed glute developments from that bottom range. And on those last few reps, I can really feel even my glutes kick in to help support because the quads start to fail. So you kind of get a double whammy on this one. Now with this machine, again, not everyone's able to perform it. Maybe it's not comfortable, you don't have it. This is one of my personal favorites, and I will say it has significantly increased my quad development over the years. I explained to one of my clients a couple days ago. She saw another client who had full separation in her quads, meaning she was lean enough you could see all 4 heads of the quad muscle. Now, if you didn't know that, you might be new here, you're kind of new to this whole fitness thing. The reason why it's called the quadriceps is there are 4 muscles that make up your quad. When you are lean enough, you can flex and literally see all 4 muscles. So depending on what exercise you're performing and how you perform the exercise, you can hyper target a part of the muscle just a little bit. And that could be varying your foot positioning, it could be elevating your heels, it could be, some people might say this is unsafe, but I'll just say sometimes I've seen some athletes turn their toes in or open, that kind of stuff. I'll say do what you can do effectively, safely, and pain-free. I'm telling you what works for me, what I've done. And so I'm gonna show you guys what this looks like, squatting to depth, how I place my feet, and I'll show you guys actually 2 other variations on how I use this machine to also build more quad development. So something else you can do here is I actually took my shoes off. These are just regular running shoes. They're not ideal if you're lifting like squats, lifting heavy weights. You want to have good contact with the floor. So I often take them off and really spread my toes, make sure that all points of my foot are in contact with the pad. And then from this position, I have a neutral stance that allows me to when I get down into the squat position, you'll see my knees actually do travel forward over the toes. Not here where they're down. You want to get as much knee flexion as possible to really target the quads. So the knees should travel forward like this, depending on your flexibility. If you have tight calves, I would recommend doing a little bit of stretching right before any type of squat motion. And also if you have tight hips, I do recommend turning the toes open slightly. That's gonna allow you to open up at the hip joint and get deep into the pocket of that squat. So neutral stance, I keep my back pressed against the pad, and then you're gonna come down at a 2-second count. You don't wanna just drop. You want to control, so you're keeping contraction here in the quads the whole time, and you're guiding this machine downwards. So there's tension in the quads, pushing into the pad, spreading the toes, getting as much depth as possible, gets a little bit of glutes, and then pushing the foot pad away to come up. So something else that I want to note here, that not only are you guiding the weight down and you're pushing the pad away as you come up, you can also increase the intensity by not locking the knees. So I recommend don't lock the knees at the top. When you lock your knees, you're actually taking tension off the muscles for a split second. You want to keep tension on the muscle the entire set. So if it's a 45-second set, you want constant tension. Keep a soft bend to the knees and then lower it down. Another thing you can do to have a little bit variation to this, and you might actually feel stronger to play around with, is putting your feet close together. This is going to work what we call your outer sweep, the outer part of the quad. Feet together, knees together, and then when you lower down, you'll slightly target a little bit more of this outer portion. Again, spreading your feet into the pad and not locking the knees at the top. The last variation that I want to show you guys, it is going to be, this is advanced because again, this machine is heavy. I do like to do a single leg hack squat, or it's basically a pistol squat, really, right? So foot goes in the middle. You can float this other foot, come down, and then push the pad away. And I really like this. I have noticed anytime I do single leg motions, I notice a more streamlined look to my legs. Just something I've observed over the years when I do this single leg work. But one thing you can do if you're trying to work your way up to being able to do single leg here is work on the eccentric. So you're gonna lower down, controlled, and then you can assist yourself up. So that's another way to use this machine to develop more quads. Okay, so like I mentioned before, you might be somebody who doesn't have a hack squat machine, or the machine at your gym is too heavy, or maybe you are working from home. You might be older and not quite strong enough to do a hack squat. So my recommendation would be to do either a bicycle squat, which is heels elevated, and you're going to use a dumbbell held at your chest to do a squat, or you can also do a heels elevated back squat, either with a barbell or a Smith machine. I like those two options better than anything else, because by elevating your heels, you're going to automatically shift the weight into your to your quads. You're also going to be able to have the most control and be able to perform the exercise safely and progress over time. I've seen some people recommend like a chair squat where the feet are more forward, or a landmine version. I don't really love those versions. One thing for the landmine version, people will take it and they'll hoist the bar up to their shoulder. I don't think that's a very useful thing to do. I wouldn't recommend my clients, especially somebody who's new, hoisting weight up onto one shoulder like that. It's kind of an awkward thing to do, and there's potential for injury in the shoulder when you're trying to work your quads. First of all, you also have all the weight on one side of your body versus another side. I can see how like a young man who is like maybe a sports performance athlete or sports performance trainer and working with like very strong muscular athletes might be like, oh yeah, this is a great, alternative. I think for lifestyle, for women who are midlife, who are trying to isolate that muscle, do it safely, and really focus on developing that muscle without risking injuring some other part of their body. A bicycle squat from home is probably the safest. And then also, if you have a Smith machine, heels elevated, you can really control your tempo. You can have a nice balanced weight, not worry about balancing the weight so much, and be able, like I said, to progress very safely. So heels elevated, and you can use anything to elevate the heels. It could be a book, it could be a plate. You can buy a wedge off Amazon to elevate the feet. So those are some options, but as long as you are elevating the feet and shifting the knees forward over the toes, you're gonna hyper target those quad muscles. You can also, even from a standing position, bring the feet closer. You can do a single leg, of course, and again, mimic the same thing as a hack squat. Okay, we've made it to exercise number 2, which is the leg extension machine. So it makes sense, of course, if you are trying to build quads, and the number one thing that's going to help maximize quad growth is having knee flexion. So this motion here, the greater range of motion that you can create with that is going to get you the best results. This is an old school machine here. I know not all of you guys will have this machine at your gym, but this really lets you stretch out the quads a lot. There isn't some crazy technique with leg extensions that I would suggest you need to follow other than focusing on contraction, but I have 2 tips and things that I think where people miss the most gains. Number 1 is getting the greatest range of motion possible. Setting up the machine, adjusting the machine so that you can lengthen the quad as much as possible. In this position, the quad is shortened, everything's contracted, and in this position, everything is lengthened. So the more that you can get this heel up towards your butt, the more length you have, which is why in this machine, you can see all the way back here, and go all the way up. So focusing on getting as much extension as possible with every single rep, even when you get tired. And the second thing is, I noticed that a lot of people probably are only going to about 60% efforts on this. I've seen women at my gym, and I've seen clients who I know are stronger. They can definitely do more than 30 pounds on this thing. I think the highest I've gone was 160. Check the tape. So you can really push some heavy weight on this. Everything from 8 reps all the way up to 20, 25 reps, and really pushing the weight as much as you can. I do a lot of drop sets, rest pause, myo reps, different techniques to really push myself to that near failure. I think a lot of people, because quads are very painful, I would say, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm gonna go ahead and say quads are probably the most brutal body part to train, period. And so it's easy to give yourself a little pass and go easy. If you wanna see more growth and definition, the quads can get beat up quite a bit. So you're gonna have to focus on picking a weight that's challenging and then also pushing past that lactic acid, that discomfort point that you start to feel. You gotta really push past that. A lot of times I see people could probably do 10 or 15 more reps than they actually do. So those are my 2 main tips for improving your leg extension and getting better quad growth. Okay, so we are at the 3rd and final exercise. This is a brutal one. I mentioned before, quads are arguably the most brutal body part to train. I can't say that I love it, but it works. So this exercise, even though it's number 3 on my quad list, it's actually probably one of my top 3 exercises for lower body in general. And you guys are gonna hate me when I say this, but it is the Bulgarian squats. Like I said when I started this video, I'm a Taurus and I love doing things that I perceive as effective and not a waste of my time. This move is never gonna fail you. If you're performing it right, you will get the results. When I do these, I do like to use a Smith machine because I can load a lot of weight on here and not worry about balancing with a barbell. I'm not worried about my grip strength with dumbbells. Yeah, if I get tired, I can just rack the weights. So it's great. It's a great tool to use. If you don't have a Smith machine, of course, use a barbell, use dumbbells, use whatever you have available to add weights. Most people, because they are beginners, again, if you're a woman who's getting started in weight training, I highly recommend doing these body weight only for many weeks, if not a couple months, to really build up your strength and make sure you have the form down well. can take some time. There are pieces of equipment that you can buy that are adjustable to get your foot elevated in the back. Now, you don't need that. You can use a box, a low bench. Sometimes I even use the leg extension, like the round piece, put my foot up on. You can use that. It's really important that you don't use something too high. If you use something too high, you're gonna really stretch out your hip flexor and it's gonna put your hips in a weird position. So you don't want something that's way up like that, which is why if you're a shorter woman, using a bench is usually not ideal. If you're 5'5" and shorter, you wanna get something where you just want the foot up maybe like 12 inches. A good way to know if it's the right height is you should be able to lower down and your knee should hover just that much above the floor, okay? And that would be a good height for the back of your foot. You don't want mobility issues being an inhibiting factor for performing this correctly. All you're really trying to do is get that back foot floating so that you can isolate the front leg. The second thing I recommend is to stagger your feet about hip distance apart. So I always say this with lunges too. You don't want to be tightrope walking. You don't want your feet like this. You want to take that back foot directly back, and there'll be about 10 to 12 inches of space in between your 2 feet. And that will also help with balance. So you'll be kind of straight back, not tightrope walking. So open up that front foot a little bit if you're finding balance is hard for you. You can also do these while you're standing next to a wall or a post, something where you can lightly tap your fingers against for a little bit of support, or even like a broomstick to kind of hold on to while you're working on building your strength. So body weight, get the foot position correct, and then use something to help with stability. Even a chair in front of you can be suitable for helping your balance. When you are going into the Bulgarian squat, you want to lower down nice and slowly, taking your time to get into that fully lengthened position at the bottom of the rep. So you're not gonna just drop down into a lunge. I see a lot of people doing this. They rush the eccentric and then they bounce back up and they bounce out of the rep. Again, you want to guide your body down, pause for a second, squeeze the muscles, squeeze the glutes and the hamstrings, and then come back up. I also don't lock the knee at the top when I do Bulgarians. I keep a nice soft bend to keep that constant tension. That is the core foundational form of a Bulgarian. And when you are ready, you can start adding dumbbell or barbell. And I would start with light weights initially, 10, 15 pounds. Work up to 30 pounds. I'm gonna show you guys how I do them. I use about 135. I can go higher. I think the highest I've done was what, 180, something like that? So you can see how the height here. So you can see here my knee is just floating about 1 inch from the floor. This is the right height. You don't want anything higher than this. It's gonna be too tight here and it's gonna make you arch too much. You also want to see the knee move over the toes. So I'm not back like that. I'm actually forward. And then you're pushing the floor away from you, squeezing the glute on the working leg. I'll switch legs to show you. Pushing up through this glute, squeezing the quad. Don't lock at the top, come down nice and easy. Push the floor away, come straight up. So again, there's a lot going on with the Bulgarian squat that as I've described this, you're probably like, wow, I didn't know so much was going on. But it is really important that you look at foot placement, knee placement. How you are performing the exercise matters more than people think. So taking it nice and slow. I even like to keep a good contraction to my glute and my quad as I'm lowering down before I even start the motion. I get a contraction, I lower down, pause at the bottom, and then squeeze even more and come to standing. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like using the Smith machine. Again, I like to use a Smith machine for this because I can load the weight pretty heavy and not worry about balancing, and also be able to do it safely even without a spotter. So like I said, when I see people perform this, a lot of times they're rushing the rep, they relax down, bounce out of the bottom, hard contraction. They're only focusing on the contraction and they're not getting the most they can get by slowing down the eccentric, pausing at the bottom, allowing your body to feel the weight, absorb the weight, and then take the momentum out and contract up. So I'm out of breath just doing that. So if you're not out of breath after doing Bulgarians, probably need to slow it down a little bit. All right, so those are my top 3, my favorite exercises for building quads. I do these 3 moves every single week, and I have been for years. And sometimes my entire quad workout is just those 3 exercises. I do about 4 to 5 sets, including my warm-up sets, and call it a day. So give these a try. Let me know what you guys think. If you have questions, drop them in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.